I'm like a fly on the wall. And I'm beginning to recognize the fact that these guys aren't any smarter than I was. I recognize truly the fact that many situations where you had these beautiful cars and these beautiful couplings going on, and the guys or the girls didn't have the common sense God gave a billion. Hey, this is Ty Glover. Thanks for coming for the second episode, the second inaugural episode. The first one I talked about how you can find what I call your instinctive advantage by understanding what you truly are good at. Remember when I talked about with NLP being all about the technology or the science of how we work? Well, instinctive advantages are very similar to that. We have specific things that we do that are process-oriented. We always follow a specific process when we carry out that activity. Now, when we go into automatic mode, then that's when we're really moving through flow. You see, these are all things that we always do all the time. Our heart beats on its own, respiration, everything we do, digestion is all on its own automatic function. But there are certain activities that we started practicing early on in life. We may have even done this subconsciously, but we started practicing early on in life. And they become natural to us. They become part of our natural movement, our flow. A sports example, Michael Jordan, that tongue always hanging out of his mouth. They would talk to him about, don't do that, you shouldn't do that, and so forth, but that was something he was naturally inclined to do. Who knows why? Probably was no value add to doing it, but nonetheless, he naturally fell on the flow when he was doing that. Some people might in the NLP world relate it as being an anchor, something that you naturally do, that you can move into your flow by doing it. But I wanted to talk about one specific thing in this episode because it was a really interesting story for me. At least I thought it was funny. So here's the thing. I would continually go to college. I'd take classes. And I'd take classes with a great interest and effort to do well. But then I'd feel pressure. And I feel like I'm not able to pass this class, or I'm having a problem in this class because, in all truth and all honesty, I wasn't exerting myself. I just didn't really move. I didn't study like I was supposed to, because in all honesty as well around that, I really didn't know how to study now in this new mode. So I'm at a crossroads. People would say a precipice, because here I am. My father has a trucking company, not a large one, but a trucking company, and I can always move in that direction. So it gave me a lot of comfort in knowing that, which meant I could take classes with the dream of being able to get a college education and going on in marketing and business, or I can follow my family's route and do the trucking thing. Well, long story short, I started following that trucking route because I was wasting a lot of money on college. And I would work for my father, and I had my own piece of equipment, and I would drive that tractor trailer, and I'd go Monday through Saturday from roughly 4 in the morning to 6 in the evening, and I'd do it over and over again. And I tell you, that's not the way I'm structured. I can't do that. I would even talk about a job that we had where we would keep making deliveries, and I would ask him, well, when are they going to not need deliveries? Because I'm looking forward to doing something different, not recognizing or not cluing in on the fact that that's our bread and butter, that's our money. So I'm driving for the family business. We're hauling trash. I even hauled human waste. Funny story, I'll tell you about that later. But anyway, at a certain point in my life, we're starting to build this company up, and it's a lot of work, and I'm recognizing that I'm not even getting time to date. There was not a lot of money in the business, so we weren't really making a lot of money, and I'm putting in all this hard work and effort, and I'm not getting any reward. And so that was a truly valuable lesson for me, because we're supposed to be, or rather I'm supposed to be, investing in this family business through my hard-earned, my sweat, and my tears. And I was doing that, but I didn't like what I was doing. I wasn't making any money doing it. I didn't see being able to move my life forward while I was doing it. So here's what I do. I told my family I wanted to leave the business. Now, here's the thing. When I told my family that I was interested in leaving the business, I tell you, literally the next day, this job that I had been hauling to, that my father used to actually have, a very big job, that he used to actually own for many, many years until, long story, but until we had to leave that job. But I remember that when I went in to haul material into that yard, the gentleman, the owner, a great guy named Sonny, he said to me, and he doesn't talk a lot to me, but he said to me, I'm going to help you guys to buy more equipment, to find more drivers so you can build this business, because I want you guys to take over this entire yard. Now this was a multi-million-dollar yard here from the standpoint of being able to move his material around, and he wanted to help us. So here I am, I'm telling my family I don't want to go into trucking anymore, I want to get out of it, while at the same time the path is being opened. And I went over that for about 30 seconds before I recognized this wasn't my path. And I left. I moved in with my aunt and uncle down in Washington, D.C. And I'm driving a tractor trailer again. I'm delivering roofing supplies. And, it's the same old thing, but it's a new environment. And I would go to these clubs and these places where folks were hanging out. And I'm sitting there, just wasn't talking to anybody. It was kind of like keeping a little bit of a distance, that introverted side again. But I'm overhearing conversations. And I'm watching these folks in general drive up in these really nice cars, really nice clothes, and couples, and confident, and energy, and these guys are movers and shakers. And I'm thinking, I want to be just like these guys. These are my peers. So I started listening on conversations, and I'm literally listening to the exchange of thought that's taking place. And I'm beginning to recognize a very important lesson for me. I recognize the fact that these guys aren't any smarter than I was. I recognize truly the fact that many situations where you had these beautiful cars and these beautiful couplings going on, and the guys or the girls didn't have the common sense God gave a billion. And that blew me away. And you know what I did right after that? I went back to Philadelphia. I wrote back in Temple University. I went on and completed my bachelor's in business administration. And I went right on and completed my master's because I recognized I had lost so much time. I went over to Paris, France, and I went to Philadelphia for another year, close to, and then I went over to Tokyo for a month. Paris, it was 6 months, where I met my first ex-wife. Anyway, that's that third location, Japan. It was an incredible experience because I'm seeing the diversity of ideas and thoughts that are coming my way from studying with the French students, studying with the Asian students. It was an incredible experience. And I began to develop some sense of a semblance of confidence. But why did I have that confidence? It wasn't really related to the fact that I'm doing the same thing these people are doing, therefore I'm learning it, because I had to work my ass off to learn the same thing these people, just by viewing, learned more easily. But I didn't recognize the fact that that's just the way I work. I may have to work harder at this than other people do. And so I wanted it, but I was working my ass off to get it. But I was, again, continually thinking, well, they get it naturally, I get it more difficultly. Therefore, I'm a fraud because I'm just masquerading by building this information and this knowledge and recording it while they just get it naturally. And I'm thinking they're going to find me out. So the whole time I'm later on, flash forward in schools and everything else, or with jobs at work, I'm always worried about, will I be able to answer the question that's being asked of me? Not recognizing, again, that's that imposter syndrome, that everybody else goes through the same exact thing. Those who have more confidence go through less of that. Those who are the Mensa score, high 130s, 150s, those are the folks that don't even question the thought of, will they know the answer, when many times they don't freaking know the answer. So it's all a psychological thing in the way we process information and process our experiences that have occurred around us. So here I am, finishing up my college degree. Now I have my master's, and I get my first job. My first job out of college, I was making $54,000 a year. And this is back in 1997. So that was pretty damn good. I mean, I thought that was great in comparison to what I was making before in driving tractor trailers. So while I'm making that money, again, it's always that continuous story of the imposter syndrome, and I'm not the only one, so we all know that. And here I am now making $54,000 a year. And one of the reasons why I chose international business was because I wanted to be able to travel the world, make money, and meet a lot of beautiful women all around the world. That was just, I know photographer friends who feel the same way about that's why they choose photography. It may have been a shallow thought, but we didn't have a thought outside of that. But that's what I wanted to do. And here I found myself now traveling internationally, working for the largest international company of its time, operating in over 146 countries. So Avon was a big company. And here I am working, I'm traveling, I'm going down to Mexico, for example, one of my first projects, spending upwards of 2 years there back and forth, going down to Brazil, spending a lot of time there, catching a theme here, going over to Central and Eastern Europe and seeing and working in Warsaw there. Incredible experiences that have helped me to see the way different people are living around the world, the way they're using technology, the way they're understanding, the way their government is set up from the standpoint of the way they understand, from the standpoint of their historical view. But here I am doing exactly what I wanted to do when I got out of college, except I'm not. Because I'm traveling to all these great places, but I'm working in a job that I really hated. And I remember being on that plane, flying back and forth many times and writing out business plans and designing this business structure, how this is going to work, while recognizing the fact that I probably should be working on my freaking job in the first place. But it was a path that I was following. It was a path that I knew way or early on in life. Coming out of college, I didn't want corporate life. I wanted entrepreneurial life. So now, if you think about it from an NLP perspective, then think about, remember that scene in Gladiator where you've got the folks that have been captured, they're all enslaved, including Russell Crowe.
And when you die, and die you shall.
They had to go through these practice exercises to make sure that they knew how to fight, or at least that they knew how to put on a good show, give them some chance of an opportunity to survive. And so they're thrown in here, they're taught, but you've got the guys who know what the freak they're doing, and they know they will survive. But you've got the other guys know that they have no idea of what they're doing, and they are therefore going to die. Through the stimulus of historical background, from the standpoint of what we've experienced in our past, to where we are currently today, it's all based on all those experiences of the tactile, the sight, sound, smell, touch, taste, and how we gained information and learned through the movement of our muscles and became good fighters, good at labor, but also confident in being the leader of that group of whatever we were doing. So we had the confidence in knowing we were operating within our area. Those excellent fighters like Russell Crowe, they built their bodies and their mind to adapt in certain ways to those situations so that they were able to effectively fight. So in all apples to apples, there really is no comparison, because you've got the one group. Hey, let's just face it, you also need in that society feeder fish.
Gotta swim, birds gotta eat.
Those were the ones to provide extra entertainment of the gore, because there's a certain gore factor. These guys are just feeder fish. The other guys, Russell Crowe's, those are the ones that are the true entertainers. So now I keep talking about what I consider as being my instinctive advantages. Those are the things that I believe I am naturally inclined to do. Now my first one would be active observance. Now that's to be conscious and leverage all 5 of my senses: sight, sound, smell, touch, taste, and actually notice everything around me and try to actually zone in consciously on that which is atypical. Because atypical is new to you, and that's how you capture an additional reference point of information from which you can leverage later on in life. So to consciously take note and to capture those details of that experience so you can understand how it works. Is it a visual experience, something that's a curiosity point for you? Is it an auditory experience? Having driven tractor trailers for probably close to 8 to 10 years, my father always taught me how to recognize sounds that are abnormal to the truck. Whether you're driving down the road, you're hearing something possibly shaking, you're hearing a different sound in the motor, you're monitoring, consciously listening. So that's the auditory side. The smell or the taste, I don't reference that much. I'm not a cook, I'm not a chef, I'm not someone who deals with senses or with actually taste itself, so therefore that would fall into their space. But for my space, it's more so the visual side. So to consciously take note and capture it and understand, or rather question, why? How come? So let me give you an example of that. I remember going to the DR maybe roughly 7 years ago. I was actually bringing my wife back to the States. That's where we had met, in the Dominican Republic. And she had taken me down to the colonial zone. Now, in this one specific building was a building actually once occupied, owned, whatever you want to call it, by Christopher Columbus. It was his last known house in the Dominican Republic. And I was looking at this building, but one thing caught my attention. As I'm looking up at all the windows on the second floor of this house or of this building, I noticed out of all the windows that were there, some of them had that bowed top in the top itself, but there was one specific window that caught my attention, and it's this one right here. So within the building itself, I just happened to notice one point at the center of the extra bow in the window. Now, I couldn't figure out why. Most people wouldn't have even noticed it. Most people wouldn't even care. I probably shouldn't have cared anyway, having seen it. But nonetheless, it caught my attention. It caught my fascination because of all these windows. And there were some differences. Some of them were square. Some of them had the rounded top edge there. But why did they add that one specific point there? That's what an innovator constantly asks. They ask the question of why is that? What's it for? What do they use it for? Because you never know where you capture inspiration. So that innovator will also capture that reference point, and they'll take it back, and they may even research it and try to find out why, what's it for, and then they store it. Once they have that knowledge, they have an experience with it, they store it within their memory, it's locked away, and then they can move on. And 9 times out of 10, it's a reference point that will never be referenced in the future again. But nonetheless, you stored a point of information. That's the key. Now, the second part of my instinctive advantage is what I call experimental curiosity. That's when you consciously question the atypical aspects with the goal and the objective of understanding the reasoning and the difference. Why is that? What did they use it for? One of the best ways to express that is through a poem by Rudyard Kipling, who lived it from 1865, I think, to like 1936. He was an English poet and writer and author, and he had an expression that I really love. It resonates well with me. I keep 6 honest men serving me. They taught me all I know. Their names are what, when, why, and how and where and who. I send them all over the land and sea, and I send them east and west. But after they have worked for me, I give them all the rest. I let them rest from 9 till 5, for I'm busy then, as well as breakfast, lunch, and tea, for they are hungry men. But different folks have different views. I know a person small. She keeps 10 million serving men who get no rest at all. She sends them abroad on her own affairs. From the second she opens their eyes, 1 million house, 2 million wares, and 7 million wise. I use those same servants, and I suggest you do the same thing as well. Ask the questions of what, when, why, how, and where. There's a great Amazon or AWS commercial where you get these children, all different walks of life, but they're with their parents, with friends, or with people who are adults, and they keep asking the question when they see technology in use.
How can he know that?
How did they do that? Why? Where? How does it know? They're asking the questions that everybody should be asking. But the strangest thing in that commercial, and I would advise all parents not to do that, is those kids never get an answer from their parents. And that is the time when it's the best possible way to get your kid to ask the questions and to find out and to delve into it. Well, how do you think it works? Well, why does it work that way? And get them to build their answers on their own so they can put their world together and connect the pieces. It doesn't matter if they're wrong. The exercise of actually going through and asking the questions is the most important part to remember them. So with experimental curiosity, I actively ask those questions constantly, wondering why, how everything works together. And I pull from those frames of references, and I play with them, and I move them around, and I wonder why, or what if, or how come. I ask the questions myself, and I work to find answers. So the next part, the last part of my instinctive advantage is what I call connective assemblance. That's where I actively take all those frames of reference. I find a challenge or a question, and then I look through my reference points to see how I can build a solution to the questions or the problems that were raised. But without a strong memory or those reference points from which you can pull from, you can't create anything. Nothing comes from nothing. That's exactly what you'll get if you connect nothing with nothing. So connective semblance is the fact or the process of using those 5 servants to search for those reference points that can be connected to create solutions to challenges within your sphere of influence. But the best way to leverage that is to go outside of your sphere of influence or control or knowledge by leveraging or what's called benchmarking, finding similarities and processes across your areas of knowledge or things that you've been exposed to, and being able to take reference points on how things are done here and applying them there to make that process better. more effective, more efficient. That's what benchmarking is all about. One great example of that is this new company, this new Chinese car company called NIO. Now, you've got Tesla. Tesla's building charging stations all around the country, possibly all around the world. But you've got NIO. They're doing their model differently. They're not going to charge your batteries. They're going to have you pull into a gas station, or rather a filling station, and they're going to swap out your batteries. Now, the problem is it takes about 5 minutes to swap a battery. So what could NIO actually do to be able to actually get a better idea of how do I innovate this process? If I know it's only going to take about 3 minutes to fill a car, therefore I want to get it down as a reference to 3 minutes. That's my benchmark, which means how can I go and learn how to do this better, how to do this faster? Now, I've sped up the video just to highlight the point that I'm trying to make, but you go outside of your industry, you go outside of your area, your sphere of knowledge, that which you're aware of. You go to other spaces because they do things differently in other spaces, and therefore you can potentially find applications of the way it's being applied there to apply it into your own space itself. And the larger, or the more reference points that you have of experiences, the better you're able to fill those gaps with solutions that can definitely solve the problems that you may be experiencing, regardless of where you are or whatever you're doing. All across your life, you can find those patterns that may be applicable to the space in which you operate in. Within the next series of vlogs, what I'm going to try to show to you are some of the shows that you'll see on Netflix or Amazon Prime. Everyone's got those types of accounts, where these are different pieces of the puzzle that you can use to fill yours in. Mine is the understanding of a big picture. That's how I understand and incorporate into my consciousness the concept of scale. When I look, for example, across from the Big Bang Theory and what happened at the beginning of the universe, the present day, but operating around where we came out from the standpoint of mammals as a species, moving up through the different types of early man coming into us and our existence, and how we've developed, how our brain has developed and understood and processed information. So just looking at those different types of shows to help you to get a better understanding of not just how do you connect pieces in time, at least that works for me, but it naturally assists you in exercising the concept of scale. When you can think from the standpoint of connecting pieces across time, again, that works for me, then it can help you to start connecting other pieces in your life, points of information, and scale them and see the bigger picture of everything that you're looking at. How far can I take it? So that's what Think Different Nation is about. It's about exploration. It's about entrepreneurial ideation. And welcome to the journey. Cheers.